Good day, everyone. I wanted to do a little quick intro to this video before we got into it. Today's video I made with a friend of mine, Nicole Thompson, who is an educator in Philadelphia, who's worked with students' social emotional needs for years in Philadelphia. And so she and I were talking recently, and we talked about how really this year is about our own social emotional care and the social emotional care of our students. And although lesson plans and those sorts of things are really important this year, that it is finding time to make sure that our students are feeling cared for and that we are feeling cared for so that we can be the educators that we're called to be this year. So Nicole brings up a lot of really great points on how you can do this year, even in the virtual setting. And I want to tell you on the front end that Nicole is hosting a free masterclass this Thursday at 8 p.m. for anyone that would like to attend. I put all of the links of everything down below, and you might just want to check that out after you watch this video. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Nicole Thompson. And action. We've done this before on Instagram. We've done this before when you came to my classroom, back when I used to have a classroom. And I remember sitting there with you and students watching us, and they were supposed to make sure we were in frame, but it was all wonky. And it was like, hey, welcome back to the show. And it's like, guys, does anyone pay attention? Is it like, I don't understand what's happening right now. Would you, before we get into our conversation, tell folks a little bit about who you are, what you do, that sort of thing?
All right. So my name is Nicole Thompson. I'm a former school psychologist, retired, because I started my own business. It's been 2.5 years now, which is hard to believe. But I started my own business focusing on trauma-informed care because when I was at the high school that I was serving, I realized that there was a huge need for it and that many of the interruptions in education, the whole entire education process, is because of trauma. And I knew that I had to do something about it. So I started trauma-informed training. Is now all online because of COVID, and it's called Reverse the Adverse. And that is what I'm up to as of lately.
So this is such an interesting topic to me all the time. And I just think that it never like runs out of steam for me because it's such a messy conversation, right? So like everyone wants to know, like when people think about things like classroom management, like social emotional stuff, the answers that come up are always so clinical and so kind of like one size fits all. And it's not. It's like it's a way more nuanced conversation than that, where it's like, depends on the kid, depends on the situation, depends on that sort of thing. Like what worked for you when you were working in the school with students, like what worked for you with regards to like trying to help kids like navigate their emotions, navigate their problems that they're having with teachers or whatever. Like what was the biggest help to you in that?
The biggest help to me in that was actually establishing relationships, because once you establish the relationship, the kids are going to trust you and they tell you, like, you know, whatever it is they feel like telling you. It goes from being a wall and a closed book to like telling you things that you didn't even want to ask. So I honestly could say that I focused on relationships. And when students came in my office, which they did every single day, and I had a ton of kids that would come in literally every single day. So if they came in one day and I looked them in their eyes, because, you know, it's easy to get a feel of what someone's going through, and something was going on, I would just tell them, hey, stand back after everybody leave. And after they left, then I would say, what's going on? And they would tell me what was going on. And I would never, I can't say never, but I would very seldomly tell them what to do or suggest, give them any type of advice. I would simply just listen. And from me listening, the kids know that you actually care, because there's not too many adults there that actually take the time to listen to kids. And that just strengthened the relationship even more. So, you know, when they were going through things later on, they knew that I was there and they would come to me again time after time.
So our messages are always so closely aligned. So this is what I love about that, is that a lot of times I'll tell folks like what I would do. And as we were talking about before the broadcast, like it is more about going with the spirit of what I would do than rather just the exact thing. But I appreciate that, like, you and I have like these messages that are so closely aligned, because to me, it's just like, yeah, this isn't just like a me thing. It's not just a Nicole thing. It's not just a Reynolds thing. This is like it is just good practice to like build relationships with students. And then what does that look like? It looks like removing the crowd and just talking to individuals so that they might, in fact, like open up to you and share something with you now that the whole class isn't there, or just talking to kids about stuff like, and that makes people, a lot of educators anyway that I work with, feel so awkward. Like they don't know, well, what do I say? How do I enter into that conversation? Like, how do I know what they're interested in? So what would you say to that? Like what is it that there's just some kid, you're in a classroom, you don't know them very well. How do you enter into that conversation with that individual?
First, before I hit on that, I want to say that there's research to support what we're doing. You know, yeah. Like when I first started out, I had no clue that it was research to support it. But loving relationships, trusting relationships, it heals trauma. And I know like your niche isn't trauma, but you deal with traumatized students all the time. Sure. And you can see that the strategies that you're using work because it's research to support it. And a lot of times people get caught up into the clinical side of healing. Like in order for me to heal students, I have to be trained as a mental health professional, or I have to have a license or some sort. I don't have time. But what a lot of educators have to really believe and trust is that you don't have to have that type of training and you don't have to have a clinical setting. It's more about relationships and making the students feel secure and safe in being in your classroom. But in terms of just trying to get to know a student, I always just like to say, so tell me about yourself. People love to hear about themselves. They love to talk about themselves. And when you're really open to listening to what they're saying and they have your undivided attention, that's just another level of trust and relationship that is going to spread all throughout the classroom.
Yeah, it is. It's putting the kids, I think, in a position where they know better than you do. Like, so they're in the know, right? So you don't know anything as good as you know about yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's, what kind of stuff are you interested in? What kind of shows you're watching, video games you're playing, that kind of thing. Or like you said, sometimes kids just, they just come out with like the craziest stuff where once that relationship's built, then you can get to the heart of that trauma, or they will share with you like the hard thing that they went through. So because I know I'm trying to like, I know how I feel about a lot of these things, and I almost know what you're going to say, but because of that, I would love to hear you say it. Like, why is that important to get kids to even talk about stuff? Because a lot of folks are terrified. Like that's the fear, is like, what if I ask them about themselves and then they tell me something like difficult, something they went through, something that was hard. And then they're like, it's this weird spot that you're put in, right? And so, but why is it important for kids to talk about that sort of thing?
It's important to talk about it because really outside of that, they don't have anyone to talk to about it. So what I went through a lot working in a high school, many of the students would suffer some type of trauma, and when they went to go discuss it with their parents, some cases the parents would get upset and say that they were lying, that it didn't happen, and just cut the conversation off and the communication off. So just being able to communicate with the students and them letting it off their chest is a form of healing for them. You don't have to say anything. And I don't know how many times I can stress that, but you really don't have to say anything. You're just simply there to listen. And I could give the example, if you've ever been on public transportation, and whenever I am, it just seems like someone comes up to me, they tell me all this personal information, and then we part ways. That was simply for them because they needed to get it off their chest. Students are the same way. They just need someone that they know is going to listen to them, that they know is going to keep their information to themselves and not tell anybody. And what I always do, I give the kids a heads up all the time. I say, whatever you tell me here is between me and you, unless you say that you're going to hurt yourself or someone else, then I'm going to have to tell. And after I give them that speech, they just tell me whatever it is that's on their heart.
Yeah, that's so important. It's like, I tell kids on the front end, like, look, I'm a mandated reporter. So if you tell me that like your parents are beating you or something like that, like I have to share. But what you need to do is trust that I have your best interest in mind. I'm not just handing you off. I'm not just getting rid of the conversation. I'm not betraying your trust, but I'm in fact, I care so much that I'm going to help you see this through. And that's so important. It's funny to hear you say that people just come up and tell you stuff. Because that it wouldn't happen. So I live in Jersey, so we don't really do public transportation. You got to drive everywhere. But kids do this to me all the time. Like if I'm at the playground with my own children, if I'm at a soccer game, if we're out, me and my wife could be in Target and kids will just start telling me about what they want for Christmas, or like that they love their dog, or that blue's blue's my favorite color. And I'm like, bro, what? Huh? And then oftentimes moms will look at me and they're just like, look at me like I was talking to their kid. I'm like, no. I did not kick off the conversation here. Like your kid's just talking to me. And it's weird to them too, but I don't know what it is. But I think, and not to get too woo-woo, but like my wife and I talk about this sometimes where it's like certain people just kind of put off that energy. So I think teachers shouldn't be surprised that if you put off some sort of energy or vibe that makes kids know that you can be trusted, that you are, not to say one of them, but someone that is, I don't know, that like attracts kids in, that they know that they can trust you, that they can talk to you, that they can share things with you. They're going to do it. And so don't be afraid of that. Like lean into that, but just know that that comes with some awkwardness. So what do you do when someone is all awkward or like tells you something and now there's this silence? Because I mean, one of the things I'm always telling folks is your attention is more important than your advice, right? So just showing up, just sitting with someone, do you have any suggestions as to how someone could kind of get through that? Because it feels like the most awkward moment of your life when a kid bears their soul and then you're just like, I don't have an answer. I don't know what to tell them. What would you say to that?
You know what? I've been in that situation many times. And honestly, I can't remember what I said on each occasion, but I usually just say, I'm sorry you went through that. It's not much you can say to a person when they tell you all of that and you're not in an actual therapy session, because us as human beings, we always just want to fix things. And it's like against human nature if we're not trying to fix it. But just keep in mind whenever they're telling you all of that, even if it's a awkward silence, which there has been awkward silences on, again, plenty of occasions, I just usually end it like, I'm really sorry you went through that. And I just leave it there. And then they'll just come again and tell me more and come again and tell me more. The thing is, there's never really a time when you're not going to be awkward. Because again, you want to say something, you want to tell them what to do, and you want to interject. Sometimes silence is golden. And I think in those cases, that's when it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is one of the things for me that I didn't really get until I was married. And my wife would be like, I don't want your advice. I just want to tell you about what happened. And I'm like, no, babe, here's how we're going to fix this. Well, I got you. We'll take care of it. And she's like, I don't want your answers. And I used to think, why not? Like, I know how to take care of it. And two, when I had kids, that like when your kids get hurt, I used to do this thing that like my dad did to me and my grandfather did to me when, as a boy, when I'd fall and get hurt, they'd say, you're all right. Come on. You're all right. Dust it off. Walk it off. But if my sister got hurt, it was a different animal. Then it was like, we're picking you up and we're loving you. And I found that I didn't have to be overly like emotional about it, but I would just like pick my son up and just hold him until he felt better. And what that showed me was that just your presence, just being there, just an act of care to a child is just being willing to sit in the awkwardness. And sometimes I even tell kids like, look, if this gets a little awkward, I'm good with that, man. Like, I'm good with awkward silences. I teach English, and when no one does their homework, freaking ask questions about the story, and it's just like, does anyone have an answer? No? Did anyone read this? Does anyone know what story? Does anyone know what class we're in right now? It's so weird. And so I've groomed myself over the years. And I think you get better at it. It's not awkward. You realize that it is that kind of golden space, like you said, where you're just a kid is honoring you with the ability to sit with them in that. So what about, let's switch topics real quick, because I think what's interesting right now is, I mean, I've been teaching from my laundry room since March. I have not worn real pants since March. I just wear pajama pants or sweatpants every day. It is like, I dress like a mullet. I get dressed up on the top and it's party on the bottom kind of a thing. So, but this is, I mean, it's been incredibly difficult for teachers and for students. With some of the work that you do now, what would you say to folks that are really having a hard time with this kind of stuff? Like what can they be doing to really help themselves show up and keep being the teachers that they are meant to be?
And everyone's saying this word and it's a buzzword, but it truly is self-care. Because especially on top of the pandemic, all of the other issues that are going on in the world, and so many of us, our stress levels are like through the roof because we've been forced to work from home and adjust, and kids not turning on, you know, their cameras, not participating in everything. So it's really important that you increase your self-care, however that self-care looks to you. And I always tell people to schedule it. Because if you don't schedule your self-care, you're really not going to get around to it. So self-care first thing in the morning, and then give yourself grace. Like a lot of times we're too hard on ourselves and we want to do so much. But given the situation that we're in, a lot of us have kids, and you're trying to make sure that they're on their laptops doing their work. You're trying to teach at the same time. You're trying to cook in between. It's a lot going on, a whole lot going on. So give yourself grace. If you didn't do as many things as you wanted to that day, it's okay. If you know, whatever goals or whatever it is you set for that day, if you come up one short or so, don't beat yourself up, and just don't tune into the news as much either. I think this is a huge part of my self-care, especially because when you tune into the news all the time and you start to obsess over it, then you put yourself into a state of worry, and all you're doing is worrying about what's going to happen. And I forget where I heard this from, but worrying is like meditating on things that you don't want to happen. So of course they're going to happen, and you're going to pull in more bad things and more negative energy into your life. That's why it's just important to increase your self-care and keep positivity around you at all times, and really enjoy this time, because we don't know and I don't want it to sound I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but just enjoy spending this much time with your family, because we don't know if we'll ever get this chance again. Not saying that it was good or bad, but what's for sure is we have been spending more time with our family. Enjoy yourselves, you know, play board games, think of different things that you can do. Because I know my kids and I have been playing more board games and just spending more time together because we can't really go anywhere. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, I literally, I don't know what my dog's going to do when I go back to work one day. I think, I don't know. He just like lays under my desk all day. And it is, you know, I think it's framing a lot of that stuff too, right? So thinking, like you said, like watching the news or thinking about how messed up things are, it's, you know, I kind of liken it to like if you get a new car, or if you bought like a shirt that you didn't think anyone else had, and then you go out and you're like, oh, all right, you all shop at the same store now. Like we all got the same thing. Or my wife got a new car a few years ago. I'd never seen a car like we got a RAV4, right? So like I never saw a RAV4 in my life. I just didn't pay attention to it. Now all of a sudden I'm like, yo, why is everyone in the neighborhood driving the same car as us? Like we must have kicked off some kind of trend or something. I don't know what's going on. But you start seeing those things that you're focusing on. Mm-hmm. And so if you look for the positive things, if you look for that, you know, stuff other than what the news is constantly selling you, that stuff really, it just shows up like, and it's kind of weird and it sounds a little bit, you know, hippie or something, but like it works.
It honestly doesn't, because what you focus on expands. That's just universal law, you know? Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So what do you do for self-care? Like what's that look like? Like big things or just like little things during the day? What helps you?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, this got me really excited today either, because like you were just saying, you haven't been getting dressed. I haven't been getting dressed either. And I really do like to dress. So today I put on like 3 or 4 different outfits and I walked around and I said, oh, look at me. I look cute. And I stood in the floor mirror and I really just enjoyed myself. That was part of my self-care today. I don't do that every day, but you know, it's just things like that. Sometimes I'll say, you know, I don't feel like looking ugly today. So I'll get up and I'll fix my face up and I'll put on some clothes, or I'll drive like I did earlier. I drove to McDonald's, got a cup of coffee. It's little things like that you know are going to keep you sane. You know, when you start to feel that slump and when you're starting to feel like, yeah, I don't like the way I'm feeling kind of sad. Whenever I'm feeling kind of sad or just feeling off, I make sure that I switch it up, because, you know, cabin fever, you can really get cabin fever during this time. And I always try to make sure that I'm doing something every single day. Like my daily practice is getting up before the kids, because if I try to do it while they're up, it's just not going to happen. Yep. I get up and I do yoga. I make sure that I do yoga and I meditate and I journal and I also read, which was allowed me to read your book. I just finished it yesterday. Awesome. Right. So
we're talking again about this book right here.
Yes, Teacher Class Off. And I really love, like, we are all over the place, but I really did a chapter about toxic teachers, because no one seems to talk about that if you're an educator, because you don't want to be like the one sitting up on your high horse and calling people out. But it's so real, and it's so important to watch the people that you hang around, because then their energy can rub off on you, and you too, you know, could possibly be toxic. So yeah, that's a part of it too. Watch who you're hanging around.
Yeah, I think that's a self-care thing too. And it is, you know, one of the ways I try to handle that in the book was like, it is about being more inclusive also than exclusive. So it's not just seeing toxic teachers and thinking like they're just like that. There's just something wrong with them. They're just kind of miserable human beings. But like maybe they're miserable because no one invites them, right? So like, I don't know when this started, but like you can, hey, why don't you come do this thing that we're doing in our class? Or like, hey, I heard you're doing this in class this week. Would you mind it? Even if it's a Zoom call, like, can I pop in? I'd love to like see that, and just letting people know that you care about them. But in a hangout situation, I think it's one of those self-care things is just that it's being real careful about who you're around. And my wife and I have talked about this extensively recently, but like we have really in the last 2 years, and this is when my wife's always like, you can't say this stuff on the internet all the time because our friends are going to watch this. They're going to wonder if you're talking about them. Well, then maybe they should, because we have relabeled all of our friends. And my pastor did a sermon about this a while ago where he said like, it was called "What About Your Friends," right? Based on the TLC song. And so he said, it is like, are you best friends with someone because you've been best friends since you were 9, or are you best friends because they actually fill you up? And that doesn't have to be the same kind of filling you up as everyone. So I have friends that like, I love running a business. I love doing a million things at a time. Not all of my friends have to do that. Some of my friends are like just kind of curiously interesting individuals, but they have like no giant career aspirations. They're not trying to be millionaires. They're not trying to like do anything that's necessarily changing the world. They're just like good people to be around. They make you laugh. They make you slow down. They make you be present because you're engaged in them, and you can have like these long conversations for 3 hours and you didn't even know that happened. But it's like, is that who you're around, or is it folks that are just like drumming up drama and nonsense and like making you question like, man, what? I feel like crap when I leave, or like this is why we have to drink when we hang out because you act like this all the time, that kind of thing, where you know it's important to be mindful of that sort of thing. So look, I'm also wondering, so you're doing this program now, which exists online. I'm not even going to speak. So I know about it, but I would love it if it came from you. Like, what does this look like? What is your kind of vision or goal? Like, you know, where did all this come from?
Okay, so I'll start with where it came from. I'll work it up from there. So where it came from, like my experience at the high school, the kids just weren't learning like they were supposed to. And I could tell. I could pick it up on the relationships that the students and the teachers had. I saw it you know, just sitting in the classes and observing. And I knew from having the relationships with the students that I had, the things that they were telling me, why they were acting the way that they were. And I knew that it was strategies that the educators could use to really get rid of all of those barriers and build the relationships with the students, how I had the relationships built with the students, because I noticed that with my dealings with the students, I was able to make magic. And I'm not trying to say that to brag or anything, but I was really able to get the students to believe in themselves and to shine. So in terms of how the actual program looked, or the online training, the professional development, whatever it is you want to call it, it comes in a couple of different formats. You could get a live virtual training, like how I'm sitting here talking to CJ. We would do the same thing this way, and that would be 2.5 hours. Or it comes pre-recorded. In the pre-recorded version, you can buy it anytime, because I have links on all of my socials. And again, it's pre-recorded. You could go at your own pace. And there's different modules in the training. So, and the modules are based off of a framework. The framework is reverse. So it's, you know, really a play on the words adverse childhood experiences. You want to reverse those experiences. So the modules are R for reflect. And that's where we're doing internal work, because we know to truly be trauma informed, you have to really work on yourself first. And then the second module is educate, where I give you different information about all the types of trauma that your students can be impacted by. V is visualize. How does this trauma manifest in schools? And then we're on REVE, empathy. This is when I give you different strategies on how to be empathetic with your students and not show sympathy, because we know there's a huge difference between sympathy and empathy. And then I go on to, I keep losing my place. So now we're on reach. So I tell you how to reach your students, how to break those walls down that everyone is saying that the students have, but we know that if you approach them right, then they don't have that wall built up. The sixth module, I'm on 6, right, is strategize. And this is where I just give you different strategies, what worked for me, what have worked for many educators in the past. And I'm seeing tons of results where, you know, you're trying to build the relationships and you're trying to just use strategies in many different cases where there's different behaviors, where the students aren't motivated to learn, like what should you do in those cases. And the last module is empower. And this is when I go deep into how to give the students hope, because we know a lot of times when you're living in these environments, in these neighborhoods, and you've seen it, CJ, like it's really difficult to cope with, especially if you're seeing people that you love being murdered, or so many of the things that you're going through. It's easy to get hopeless. So we end it with empower, and I give you all what you need to empower the students. And of course, there's some bonuses in there, because I always think about what the teachers want and what the teachers need. So we go through some self-care strategies. We also go through anti-racism. I give you some literature on anti-racism, what to read, what to watch, different things of that sort.
So, you know, one of the things I think that you said, I mean, you said a lot that I could just like pull out and have like a full-on conversation about, but that empowerment piece, you know, I did a phone call with someone the other night. They were wondering, so I made this video and I put it up about like how to kind of talk to your students after the events that happened at the Capitol building last week. And someone reached out and they said, hey, I'm just wondering, like, how did that conversation go? And I said, you know, it was different for different students, but the overall feeling that I got was that my students have been through so much, especially in the last year, especially with regards to COVID and Black Lives Matter. And that really hitting home in Philadelphia, like when I want to say his first name was Walter, I'm forgetting, but when Walter Wallace was murdered by the police, and my students, like, were, some of them, I've had kids that were there. I had kids that knew people that were on that block. Like it was close enough to home that there were like connection pieces, or, you know, and you know this too, like just losing kids you care about, losing like students that you have, losing a friend. And when you live in that cycle, what happened at the Capitol building is like, it just like wasn't that big of a deal, because I think my sense is that you just get so desensitized to a lot of this stuff that like it stops taking on meaning. We're like, you know, we've had moments where there was a shooting outside of the school or just down the block. And this is the end of the day. Students, when you're leaving today, please make sure that you exit to the right. There's police activity down to the left of the school. So everyone just has to go right. And they're like, oh man, I'm trying to get home or whatever. It wasn't like, wait, what happened? Or what's going on? We didn't have counselors at the school. Like, you know, and we've seen people like young men. One year, a young man was shot outside of my classroom. We heard the bullet, we heard the shot, and we watched him in the street, like died in the street outside of my classroom. And, you know, there were no counselors at the school the next day. And this is not a diss necessarily even to my school or to the community that I'm a part of. It's just like when that was done and the police finished it, we just went on Teach a Merchant of Venice. And I noticed the teachers too, like you kind of start getting like, it's not that it's not that big of a deal, but you have to build up some sort of scar tissue to be able to keep moving. Otherwise it doesn't happen. And so I just think that that's a really important point, to be able to get kids to talk about that stuff, to acknowledge it. And then how are we going to help them to be empowered to go forward? So let me ask you this before we're done. Professional development. This is one of the things I think is hilarious about what I do, is that when I get to go speak at a school and run professional development, I hate professional development. And I will say this knowing that I'm hoping no one from my school ever watches this. Everybody at my school knows that if PD starts and I don't like the speaker, because I can tell in the first 2 minutes generally if I'm going to like, or if I'm feeling what you're doing. If not, I pretend I get a phone call. I go upstairs to pretend to get my phone calls. We have bad reception in the basement of the school. And then I just go to my room and do work. Or I go help kids with something. I'm like, I'm not sitting here for 2 hours listening to someone that taught for 5 minutes trying to tell me what to do. Like I feel some type of way about it. What is it about your professional development that you think is like what is it that makes it really worth kind of like showing up to? And I asking this knowing what I would tell someone if they asked me, why would I go to Nicole Thompson's thing? I know exactly what I would tell them, but I just want to know from your side, what is it about?
One, like people love it because one is engaging. We know most of the time PDs aren't engaging. The presenter just talks to you. You sit there, you fall asleep. No, I'm talking to you. I'm asking you questions. I'm asking you thought-provoking questions where you're actually taking time to write out the things that you're thinking about. And I'm giving you information that's relevant that you can actually use tomorrow. Or if you're having the professional development early in the day, you can use it later on in the day. So it's like, it's rooted in real life. It's not this theory or anything that someone that was never in education thought about. It's from someone that was actually in the urban high school for several years, that had all of the experiences that I talk about. And I know how to get kids to, how do I say this? I know how to help kids heal and get to where we want them to be. So yeah, like if you need help with trauma, which we all do at this point, it's just a really good idea to be trauma informed and then have strategies to actually go with the knowledge that you have, so you can see some type of I keep having brain farts today, CJ. This
is what happens when you get older. I'm just saying. I find that after 35, I'm like, child of mine, I think you're one of mine. Come here. I don't remember your name.
But yeah, it's just that. It's engaging. It has a workbook, so that's a resource. Yeah. We're talking about, I told you, anti-racism. We're talking about how to deal with urban students, because we just know from our experience that a lot of educators have a difficult time connecting with the students and really teaching the students, because just because you're there and you're teaching doesn't mean that the students are learning. You know, it is a huge difference, you know. So yeah, if you want a PD that you can actually implement right away with no problems, then first adverse is where it's at.
That's so important. I mean, tell folks all the time that like, if I need a plumbing problem fixed in my house, I don't call someone that knows theoretically a lot about plumbing, right? I need to know someone that like knows, like they've been in there, they've worked with pipes. Like you wouldn't want to learn to swim from someone that was like, no, dude, I read a lot of books on this. Like I know a lot about this. Have you ever been in a pool? No. Never touched water in my life, but I know like all the scientific properties around it. And like, bro, no, that doesn't fill me with hope at all. But someone that's done it, that tried it, that's like, no, this like building relationships works. And I push it so hard because I've done it time and time again to the point where I just have had, like, I still get kids to just call me. I still get kids that like stop by my house, even during COVID, that will just be like, yo, Reynolds, I just want to drive by and like say what's up to you and the kids. And then they'll drive by and like after work, they just need to be around that energy a little bit. And so it's like, you see that work and it's like, dude, people need to know about this because it like, no matter who you are, no matter what kind of teacher you are, no matter what your personality is, you can find somebody out there that thought they were invisible, make them feel visible. And then classroom management becomes a non-issue. Like if you can connect with the student, it's like, you know, I mean, you might have to remind dudes sometimes, but it's like, bro, really? Like in my class? Like, can we remember where we are right now? My bad, Reynolds. And then it's just game on from there. Like it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So
it was to the point so the student that I had more of a relationship with, I would be like, you know, let's say Tanya, I think you need to talk to Ed. And she would talk to Ed and get Ed straight. So it's like those type of things. And even, you know, just thinking about all of my experiences that I had in life, when I was working in a prison, I was able to thrive there. And if I can thrive in a prison and use those same type of relationship strategies, you know, to get really good with the inmates, what makes you think that this won't work with students, with children? You know, yeah. I think a lot of times we just want a quick fix it. We don't want to do the work to actually get the results that we want. And then we get frustrated when it's not working quickly. And we know that once you're frustrated, your classroom management is out the door.
Yeah, no,
you start yelling and all that stuff.
Right. It is like, you know, it is what I talk about when I talk about like teaching like a DJ, where like, it's not like there's a reason you hire a DJ, right? You hire a DJ because playlists don't always work, right? There needs to be someone there that's feeling out the crowd, that if you put on a song and it clears the dance floor, bro, we're not waiting until this thing's over. You gotta transition into something else that's going to keep the party moving and keep people on the dance floor. Mm-hmm. And as an educator, you have to know how to do that too. But it's learning how to read the room, how to read a student, how to, like, what kid can you raise your voice with, right? I'm not against it. There's some kids I'd never raise my voice to because I know I'm not going to get the effect that I need. But I know, for instance, a lot of students I've had with ADHD, like just raising my voice, not yelling at someone, but raising my voice, it lights something up in their brain that they're just like, what, Reynolds? All right, I got it. And then like, or they almost kind of like it. And there's different things for different people. I mean, like I have friends that are like very firm. I have friends that joke around a lot. I have, you know, known teachers that have, you know, I teach at all boys school, and like when they deal with like football players and somebody, you know, the teacher puts someone in a headlock, like when that's done, and that sounds like a weird thing. Someone's going to click off there. But what I'm saying is when these things are done in love and they're done to fit your personality and you know who your students are, you know who your audience is, it just, when you learn how to bridge those gaps, I mean, I feel like there's only so many kinds of kids. And it's like, you know, the next year you might see someone and they're doing the same kind of thing. You go, oh, I know on some level, like who you are, what you're about, or what I can do to start facilitating some healing in this relationship between us, between you and the world. And I think that is just like the best thing that we can do for our young people, is like show up and let them be who they are, and try and help them to grow into the person that they want to be. So, look, before we get out of here, where can people find you on the internet?
Okay, so my biggest presence, because I'm on Instagram a lot. Instagram, Go Educators. I'm on every platform at Go Educators. So it's Instagram, Facebook, Go Educators. My website is goeducators.com. And if you want to sign up for the free masterclass that I have coming up on Thursday at 8 o'clock, you can do so by clicking the link that CJ will leave. But that website is goeducators.com/class.
Got it. So that will be, I'll put it in the description below. And then if people want to follow you on Instagram, they can go over there and find it as well. And I'll have all those links in the description box below too. So look, I always really appreciate talking to you, and I feel like we could go on and on and on forever. But I appreciate you carving out time to do this. I know it's busy. It's busy these days, man. I feel like my life just never stops.
Yeah.
I look up at night, I'm like, oh, it's 10 o'clock. Maybe I should get off my computer and stop sitting here before my butt grows roots. I don't know what's happening, but cool. Well, look, thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, CJ.